Through the Leadership Lens is brought to you by Thompson Autogas. Thompson Autogas is the industry's gold standard turnkey solution for all your autogas needs. From funding to refueling and everything in between, Thompson Autogas is there to support your fleet every step of the way.
Welcome everyone to another Through the Leadership Lens, a podcast presented by the Women in Propane Council. I am Freddie Riddler.
And I'm Bridget Kidd, and today we're very excited to have Marci Ballard on the show. Marci is the Director of Corporate Development at Christensen, but a very familiar face in the industry, serving many roles in many organizations, and I don't think an unknown character in the industry. And we are very fortunate to have you here to talk about what you're doing in the industry, but also, as you know, the podcast is about leadership. So if you would kick us off, Marci, and tell us, what does leadership mean to you?
I would love to, and thank you for having me here today. So I've been following along the lens of leadership and what everybody else says their definition of leadership is, and I think mine's a little bit different. I'm a firm believer that you do not have to actually know how to do your employee's job in order to lead them. I'm in propane by day, right? Propane fuels, lubricants, but that's not where my passion lies. I received my education in industrial and organizational psychology. So that's just a mouthful for how do you get more out of people and have them love every single minute of it. And so I think leadership is more about motivating people to do their job and to do their job well. And so, I mean, that's really what it is for me.
So, Marci, how do you get more people to enjoy their job? You asked the question, so I gotta re-ask it.
Fair enough. So it's different for every single person. That's the key there is knowing what motivates individuals. So how do you know what motivates them? Is asking a ton of questions and being true and authentic and goofy and silly or serious or whatever the situation calls for. I get teased on my team a lot and in my home life and in the propane industry even for just like being an open book. Sometimes my filter just doesn't exist and I'll spill so much information. But I think that that's really great in getting to know people, because if I'm open and I'm vulnerable, other people will be so with me as well. And so how do I motivate them? I find out what it is that they like, what it is they enjoy. Sometimes somebody's in a job that they don't love, but sometimes that can be tweaked just a little bit to be really ideal for them. And then they're happier coming to work every day. Then they're spreading joy around the workplace or the plant. And that makes it nice.
That's cool. Marci, I'm out of kind of a personal, I didn't realize that we had that in common. I also have a degree in organizational development and leadership. What put you down that path? Did you have a mentor that kind of got you there? It's a unique degree, but an important skill set, I would say. How'd you end up there?
It was accidental, for sure. I mean, I went on a tour of Washington State colleges, so I could have all my alumni behind me. Only graduated from a couple of them, but I had taken almost the easiest way to graduation at a certain point in time. I was like, okay, what is the bare minimum I need to do to graduate by this date? Like, let's get this done. And so that ended up being in management operations with a minor in HR. Like I needed like one more class to get a minor in HR. And I thought, great, let's just do that. But what was great about that is I fell in love with this just leadership development class and didn't really think much of it. Graduated, put that behind me. I was working in retail at the time, nights and weekends. And I came to this, I'm going to call it a quarter life crisis. And
quarter life.
Yeah, it was. I was like, all my friends were graduating as like doctors now or lawyers. And I was like, here's me with my BA and I'm working in retail nights and weekends with kids. And what am I doing with my life? And so when I thought, what do I want to do next? I thought back on anything that ever brought me joy. I didn't have a mentor at the time. I actually had a therapist, like Hugh, getting that stigma out of the workplace, right? It's okay to talk to people. And what he asked me was, what do you really want to do? And so I thought about that. And so I went back to that leadership development of just like, how do you make people happy? And took that one step further to how do you make them happy in the workplace? And so that's what led me to getting this master's degree and throwing all my love and energy into it. I never knew I liked psychology, but boy, has that paid off.
Mm-hmm. Right. Well, that was going to be, we've talked with a couple of our guests on a similar vein, and going back to your answer about leadership and motivating people. Is there like an assessment or a tool that you like to use? There's so many out there. Is there one that you like, and why?
Yeah, absolutely. At Christensen, actually, it was introduced to me through the workplace, not through my degree. I studied all sorts of different ones, but the Enneagram is something that I have really glommed onto. I am a 3. That means I like to get to the top and look good doing it. And that's actually a tool that I use within all of my teams, even for folks that don't believe in the warm and fuzzy, right? Or that even matters in the workplace. I still have them take the Enneagram, understand what number they are. And then at Christensen, we actually have a really cool opportunity. It's called the Student of Self Pod. And so the idea behind it is you need to know yourself and be a student of yourself so you can be a better student of the business. And so we take that Enneagram kind of 1 or 2 layers deeper, depending on what we're talking about, and get to know where we all came from. What was our childhood like? Why do we make decisions the way we do? What are our reactions? And it's a really unique experience to go through. And the Enneagram is really the foundation of all of
that. It's crazy talking to you, and I know Bridget's probably the same way, but it's like we're 3 peas in a pod. Like your energy you're bringing into this, your get through college, I want to start working, but that doesn't stop me or slow me down just because I only have a BA degree. That's a huge, but what you did is like you said, I want to get through it because I have so much more to do in life. And you just attacked it. Like your entire 8 minutes in this podcast, you are a 3 because I'm a 3. And we love to get to that goal and look good doing it, but we don't stop. We get there and it's like, okay, what's next? What's next? And that's really exciting. And I see that as a lot of leadership. People love leaders that are not afraid to step outside their comfort zone. And so when you do these self-assessment leadership or projects at your business, do you ever have a time or a group of people that you really struggle getting them to do it? And the outcome of it is, wow, I learn a little bit about myself. I learn how to work with other people. I react to different people because I know who I am now.
Yes. For the Enneagram side of things, I insist on the test. I'm like, just do it. And then I might not even ever talk to them about it again if they're really hesitant. That's not their jam, but I'll use it, right? Like call it a degree in manipulation. But I'll use it for their own good, right? That's the difference between leadership and manipulation. It's for their own good. But the student of self work that we do, you really have to be willing to lean in. And we have had operations managers, we have had plenty of people within our organization that, don't judge a book by its cover, but you'd look at them and go, they're not doing this work. And they really lean in. They start meditating. I mean, they really get after learning about themselves and the why behind things, so that not so that they can change themselves, but so that they can understand and maybe adapt to a situation differently.
Well, it's also, I find them to be so helpful, whether it's Enneagram or Strengths Finders or whatever, they're kind of a dime a dozen to some degree. You have to find whatever one you're going to dig into and use. But I think it's always interesting, you look at where you may have the most high conflict or the least amount of conflict with someone, and you kind of get into, okay, this makes a lot more sense. It's not that person is unwilling to do something. They just need they're way more analytical than I am, right? Yep. Where it's like, okay, this is not as big of a hurdle to overcome in positively moving forward with someone than maybe you originally thought, if you're willing to take just a little bit more time and energy and risk. Right. And that's something that we talk about on the podcast a lot is some of this can be risky, especially in an industry like the propane industry, where you have people who've been for 3 generations, 4 generations, and they're not super interested sometimes in this kind of the psychology side of things. But we're seeing a lot of organizations thriving that are looking at investing back in their teams and the professional development. So maybe that would be my next question to you. Where do you see you? I mean, I know you're involved in the Women in Propane. I know you're involved in the Pacific Propane Gas Association. You're very involved in MPGA. You serve as one of PERC's energy ambassadors. So, what would you say about the why behind your involvement in those organizations? Because that's a lot of time and energy and resources invested personally and professionally in those groups.
So it's about connection for me. I mean, I do have some great mentors here at Christensen and within my community, but there's so much to be learned from others. And I think I have a little to teach others as well, right? It's a give and a take. And so the reason I initially got involved had to do with just like, dude, we want to sell more gallons.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
then as I stayed involved and started meeting so many people, the opportunities are endless. I now have a treasure trove of individuals I can call on with things that have nothing to do with propane. You know, when I take on a new role, I'm usually kind of making it up as I go along. And I need to be able to call on individuals. And so getting involved in the beginning and the reason that I did is so different than why I stay involved now and continue to take on, you know, more volunteer roles with still no pay extra.
Yeah, and I want to touch on something that Bridget said too. She brought the word risk, and for personally for me, I'm always asking myself, is this a risky move? Because when you're like us and you want to just keep moving forward, and you're like going at a speed where it's really hard to keep up, with other staff or other people that you know in the industry, sometimes you think in your mind this is a really great idea, but the rate you're going, do you give yourself enough time to sit back and say, is this risky? Is this going to work? Could you share with us a story that maybe you made a risky decision moving forward, staying in the blue sky thinker, and it worked out, or maybe it didn't work out, and then kind of how you reacted to that, like what came after that decision you made?
Sure. I have held a lot of different roles at Christensen. I started selling gas to gas station almost 12 years ago, while going through my master's degree and knowing that, yes, I might sell forever because we're always selling, right, as a 3. But I knew that's not the position I wanted to be in forever. And so when I had the opportunity, I actually took on our director of HR role. We called it director of career development and employee engagement. Like it was more than just HR. We were going through a transformational change. That was risky in and of itself. Maybe I had this educational background, but I'd never been in the HR field. And when everybody heard that the salesperson is now our director of HR, and then as part of kind of a deliberate career path, I left HR and became a general manager over sales and operations in the commercial business, which I had never even known about. That was another risk. And what I have learned kind of jumping to these different positions is, one, I get bored after a while. Like I need to be learning and growing continuously. And so I like the deliberate nature and the willingness of Christensen to continue putting me in new roles. But if I'm going to keep moving roles within our own company, I really have to set that role itself, not me, but the role itself up for success. Looking back, I didn't always do a great job of leaving behind great policies. Maybe there was policies, but were they implemented well so that if I didn't have my thumb on them, were they going to continue without me? And so I've paid a lot of attention in the last couple of years of what am I leaving behind that is sustainable, that will continue? Because early in my career, I was very in the weeds and I did a little bit of everything and I had my fingers in everything. And as I have grown throughout the organization, it's risky to jump to that new role if you didn't leave the last role in good hands. We always have good people, but the the processes behind it that keep things going, even when you're, off to a new adventure or even at a conference and you leave for a week. You really have to leave the position in good working order.
I'll say one more thing before Bridget asks the next question. It's not called getting bored. It's called re-challenging yourself. That's what I say at RCC. When I don't get bored of things, I just need to re-challenge myself on something else.
Fair enough.
Yeah. Marci, if we can, selfishly, PERC is gonna open up applications for the Energy Ambassadors Program for 2025 for the third year. Can you talk a little bit? I mean, the Energy Ambassadors Program is probably unknown to a lot of the industry because it's a small cohort of people. But I think it touches on a lot of what you're demonstrating in your career in taking ownership of the next phase and continuously growing and being educated. What would you, I don't know, maybe you could suggest why people should apply or consider applying for that?
So I took a lot out of the Energy Ambassador program and things that, like, even when we're at board meetings now and talking about, well, what should we tell people? I go, well, at the Energy Ambassador, we had this great presentation on, and it's really just this opportunity to learn more, to dive a little bit deeper into so many facets of propane, whether it's the renewable side of things or whether it is just the leadership development side of things. I mean, I'm such a proponent of any time you can get any kind of leadership development. And especially PERC is so gracious. I mean, they'll fly in Florida. Like, why wouldn't you do that? But it was
location, right?
And if I remember correctly, it was in like kind of a dreary time of the year back in Washington State, and it was really nice to go to Florida.
So it makes it appealing.
Right, yeah, but it's just about the learning.
Well, and one of the key components of that program, which I think is also a key pillar within the Women in Propane organization, is becoming an advocate, not necessarily a legislative advocate, of course, but an advocate for the industry above your company.
Yeah.
And that's a really difficult role, and it's a risky role to understand, the rising tides raise all ships. But, there's probably people listening to this podcast who say, oh, well, Marci or whoever else has been with their company forever, and they have all of the connections within the company to get support, right? And you've demonstrated success in partnerships and working outside of your organization. For those people listening who maybe are just getting started or haven't really taken that step to join a professional organization, what would you say to them to talk to their supervisors or their peers to get the approval to participate, whether it's NPGA, their state, or whatever the group may be?
Well, I'll go back to how I very first got started in the associations was we wanted to sell more gallons. One of my favorite parts of the Energy Ambassadors was listening to a presentation on how to talk about propane to different individuals. How do you talk about propane at your kid's school? And plugging, like, I'll be going to my daughter's school here in a little while and be bringing the coloring pages and whatnot. But how do you talk to the mom of the PTO? How do you talk to the government? How do you talk to somebody who cares about climate change or a farmer? Like, there's different messages about propane to these different individuals. And if you can talk about your product to anyone, you can sell more of your product. And so it does come down to the bottom line of, like, how do we sell more gallons? That's what we're all into. But how do we make sure that kind of the world knows about propane? So that's a starting point. I mean, I think that's what sold it for me, is like, look, I'm going to go, I'm going to learn, and we're going to sell more. But beyond that, it is about what's in it for me, right? The with them. And it's really endless. It's what you make of it.
What about, so totally, you kind of said PTO and these audiences that we talk about, we're all very active in our communities too, right? And I think leaders, you may be the leader in your family, you may be the leader at your church or your local civic group, whatever it may be. What types of groups are you involved in outside of your job that you can practice your skills or develop new skills?
Mhm.
Where else are you flexing this leadership muscle?
Thank you for asking. I am involved with our local branch campus of Washington State University. I'm on the Carson College of Business Board of Advisors, which is a little selfish because like then I have some input on what happens right here in our community. So we all have to recognize we're being selfish sometimes when we're doing this, but it is an opportunity to talk about propane, to talk about energy. I mean, with the energy transition that's going on right now, I'm able to get into different energy conversations that I wouldn't otherwise be able to. And so that's been beneficial for our organization and the industry at large. And then I'm also just very involved in kids sports. I mean, I don't serve on any of those boards. Don't have time for that. I'm not like volunteer of the year if it's in the sports world, but that's where I spend a lot of my time.
Yeah. And a lot of that matter. I mean, that's where you can practice and with a little bit less of that risk.
So Marci, switching gears just a little bit, I saw that you were a rising leader in the 2023 LP Gas. Congratulations on that, even though it was like a year ago. I have a question because I nominated a coworker of mine and she was a rising leader the same year. Can I ask who nominated you? And then if you want to say why you think they nominated you, like what were those skills that brought your name to be nominated for a rising leader?
So that was our former marketing director, and her and I have a great relationship. And I think she just saw the things that I was trying to accomplish. And it was really about, I think, women power, women helping women. Like she saw this opportunity come across her desk, and I was who came to mind first. And so I think there's something to be said about just like you nominated somebody, like we should always top of mind be thinking about, well, like who deserves this? And I in turn nominated our HR director for a Women in Trucking award. I mean, it's just when you see people doing great things and that they're passionate about it, that's when you need to speak up.
Yeah, it's hard to answer that question saying like, yeah, I deserved it.
Right. Because I deserved it. Because I work hard and I'm passionate. I mean, that's what it is.
I love it.
What do you think, Marci, when you look at that, your career going from selling gas to director of sales to HR and now, I mean, there's a lot there. What did you find to be like the scariest part of that, of your growth and leadership? And maybe it's now, like, what's the most intimidating? And then the flip side, what's the most rewarding?
Sure. Those probably go hand in hand because anytime you're being courageous and stepping out on a limb and you put your all into it, that usually reaps the best rewards. But I was most intimidated to go from HR to operation. Like, who's this girl? She doesn't know about trucks. She doesn't know about regulators. Like I was so green. And I'm coming in and being a manager of operations managers and of salespeople. And so overcoming the, stigma of like, oh, she's HR, like careful, she's still HR. You got to have your filter around her. And coming over that and going, no, listen, I don't know everything, and being so brutally honest about like, I'm here to learn and I'm here to help and I'm here to ask you questions that might help you along the way. Like that was really intimidating. But the team got on board pretty quick because they realized I wasn't a bad guy. I'm a good guy and I'm here to help. And so that was super rewarding and then to dive in and learn about all of it.
And I love how you started the podcast of what is leadership to you? Leadership to me means I don't need to know how to do their job to lead them. You basically just sum that up. That's great. I was wondering if you were going to talk more about that, and you did. So it's fun to hear that actually come to life in Bridget's question.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, I love it. Marci, I'm just so excited. I think you've got such a great perspective on kind of taking the bull by the horns, and maybe it's you don't have to know everything. You just
No.
have to be willing to learn and willing to ask the right questions, which
Mhm.
is so important now. I think that's a really critical perspective.
What do you
All right,
think?
Freddie, I think it's time.
All right, take a deep
You
breath,
ready,
Marci. The
Marcy,
hard
for
part's
some
done.
fun?
All right, this is the whip round. We're just gonna fire you questions and answer whatever the first thing comes to your mind. So I'll get it back over to Bridget to ask the first question.
Well, I'm going to ask my favorite, which I don't think I've asked in a while. What do you keep in the trunk of your car?
Oh, sports equipment.
What sports?
So my son plays baseball and football.
Awesome.
My older son had played hockey. That was very smelly in the trunk. My daughter is in softball and gymnastics. So it's like whatever's left over from the day.
You cover
All
like
of it.
a lot. Awesome. So Marci, what is your ideal vacation?
Oh, I like to go, go, go. My husband and I feel like are total opposites. He always wants to relax and like not have a plan. And so we've kind of come to this compromise where we plan to not do something. Like I'm like, we still have to have it. We have to plan to sit down and do nothing. But I like to go, go, go. And I've been fortunate enough with my career that I get to travel and get to see new places. And so I think my ideal vacation is going somewhere I've never been and figuring out what food is good there and what do the locals do.
Oh, that's my favorite too. What about if you were talking to your 16-year-old self, what do you wish you would have known then that you know now?
That it's all going to be okay. I'm a reformed and reforming worrier by nature. And so I tell my kids, like, it's all going to be okay, but it feels like lip service. But I just wish I inherently knew that when I was 16, when I was 20, when I was 30, and I still need a reminder sometimes today.
Right.
Good reminder for a lot of people.
Yes.
Marci, if you wrote a book about your career, what would the title be?
Ooh, what's next?
Wow.
I feel like that's very accurate. That's very accurate. All right. My last question is, what is the last gift you've received?
Oh, let's think about that. The last gift I received. I want to say something that we'll have to cut out of this because I think this might be true, but it's inappropriate. So I have this little fuck bucket.
I love those.
Oh my gosh.
All the time.
But the gift I received, somebody, Jeremy Ball, you might know him from the industry, got me these like little fucks to give. So like when you okay.
Oh my gosh.
If I
that's
said not appropriate.
I need one of those on my desk. Wow.
Yeah, a bucket.
I've been known to gift that, a little jar of them.
Yeah, it's wonderful. But what probably, I think, like a cute little note from my daughter. Like she'll sneak things in. I have that sitting on my desk. Actually, like it's all faded. You can't even see it. But like,
I love
she made me lunch. It was a delicious sandwich, I'm sure. But like it came with a cute little note. And so I love those little gifts.
Love it.
That's awesome.
I love that.
And then my last question is, describe yourself in one word.
Vivacious.
That makes sense too.
Perfectly done.
Wow.
I like it.
Incredible.
Well, thank you so much, Marci. This has been really fun. We appreciate your time and enthusiasm and looking forward to see you soon.
Yes.
Thank you. What a pleasure. What an honor.
Thank you so much. One last piece. Do you want to give anyone watching this podcast one or two sentence advice for them? Like what's the best advice you can give anyone listening to this podcast right now?
Lean into whatever you're doing. If you're not loving it, lean into some little part of it, and that's going to allow you to kind of follow a new path.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Marci. Thank you, Bridget.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
This has been another episode of Through the Leadership Lens, presented by Women in Propane. Be sure to subscribe, download, and share with a friend. To learn more about Women in Propane, visit us on Facebook, Instagram, or online at www.womeninpropane.org. I'm Freddie Riddler.
And I'm Bridget Kidd. Thanks for listening. Until next time.